Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we've got a early impression video on a very expensive artisanal fragrance from the house of Ensar EO2, and it is called Rumi. So I have to give a special thank you to Nick. Nick very kindly stocked me up on some amazing, rare, expensive juice that I never would be able to get my hands on by myself. So thank you very much, Nick. A big thank you. You know, without people like you, the kindness of the community, I couldn't do these videos as consistently as I do. I definitely could not have the breadth of knowledge on my channel that goes from everything from designer to niche, from cheap to expensive. I really try to go all over the place. And thank you very much. It means a lot getting to smell this sort of stuff. So before we talk about Rumi, this is going to be Artisanal Perfume Sunday because there's a couple topics that I want to talk about. The first topic is it is about 12:30 Central Time on Sunday, June 25th. About an hour and a half ago, the new Feel Oud fragrances dropped. So the website is feel-oud.com, which is kind of confusing to some people. They really should pony up and buy feeloud.com, but it's feel-oud.com. And so there's 3 new fragrances, and one of them is Oud Balsam, one is Oud de Grande, and one is Sunrise and Set. And those are the collaborations between Arise La Dorée and Bortnikov. So I bought one. I'm hoping to get to smell all 3. I'm hopeful that Russian Adam can put a sample or 2 of the ones that I did not buy in the package, as I would love to do videos on them. But if you are an oud lover, as I'm turning into, then feel-oud.com has the new Bortnikov, Arise La Dorée collaborations up, and it does still look like there's stock available on all 3, and there's sample sets for sale. So that's first announcement, if you will. Second announcement in the artisanal space is we are going to do a review tonight of a new Bortnikov, which actually very few people have talked about. It's right here. I've worn it to bed 2 times now, and I'm going to spray it tonight before bed as well and do a video on it if I have time, and it's called Scheherazade. So there's going to be more artisanal content to come, so we're going to talk about the new Bortnikov Scheherazade. And let's talk a little bit about sort of Ensar's house as a whole. Now, I am no expert on Ensar EO2, but I do have a playlist dedicated to Ensar where we've talked about things like Ensar's EO1, which I love so much I ended up buying a bottle and then backing it up. I think this is my favorite Ensar I've ever smelled because it does focus on the note of leather. You guys know I'm a leather lover. And so, you know, we've talked about things like EO1, EO2. We've talked about things like Jungle Kinam. I've got different Ensars. I did a video even on his, Japanese rose oil or you know, Japanese rose. There's a pure rose oil Atto you can buy from his site. So I've done a lot of videos on Ensar, but I'm no expert. There's a ton of fragrances that he's done. And because he does his fragrances in basically like a limited edition, sort of like Arise La Dorée, where they release things and then once it's gone, it's gone. You know, it's like a one batch made. So there's so many things I've never smelled. I've never smelled 1984. I've never smelled Crime and Punishment. I've never smelled Black Chango. I mean, there's just a million. Borneo Zen, Chinese Exclusive, Chypre Narcotique, Chypre Sultan, Egyptian Musk. You know, there's different EO1s as well. So I actually have a review of EO1 Assam on the channel as well, but there's EO1 Manipure, EO1 Sultani. There's all these different versions that he does. So my saying in this is that even though I feel like I'm starting to get to know the House of Ensar, I don't know them in and out. I'm not like a Ensar professional or anything like that. So take that with a grain of salt. But there is a rumor going around in the rumor mill. And if anyone knows the validity of this rumor, do leave it in the comments below. But the rumor is that the man who actually sources and gets the oud for Ensar, he's been sort of behind the scenes, but he's been in the business for the last 25 years or so. Is leaving Ensar and going on his own, wants to start his own brand, so to speak. And I forget if it's like Fuji or Fujuan, or I forget his name. I thought I read it somewhere, his new brand. But so that's big news. I would be very interested to see what the quality of the oils will be. And we're going to have more talk on this topic because one of the biggest issues, I think, with the oud game now is the ability to test the oils and make sure that, you know, they are what they claim to be. And if you have, let's say, 100 mils of oil, and when you're selling, you know, a quarter tola or something like that for $1,000, I mean, some of the prices on Ensar's website for the expensive oils are very, very expensive. I mean, when you're selling expensive oud oils, the validity of where the oil comes from is very important. And so one of the biggest issues, Russian Adam was explaining to me that you have to have something like 3 mils minimum to go to GCMS testing. And when you only have, let's say, 100 mils for the whole world of that particular oil, that's a lot to give up. But for knowing exactly what you have and what you're getting and all that stuff, I think GCMS testing and making sure that the oud is exactly what you expect it to be is important. It's important to know the quality of the oil and all of that stuff. So there's a little bit of a tug of war in the community right now, I think. But I would be interested to smell this gentleman's work, who was sort of behind the scenes at Ensar. And I don't know if that's just a rumor, if it's legit or what, but if you know anything about that, do comment below. And so let's talk a little bit about Rumi. So first, before we get into the fragrance at all, Rumi has been a, you know, he's been a inspiration for fragrances to be produced for a long time. This is nothing new. Ensar making a fragrance dedicated to the great Rumi, is really nothing new. And in fact, if you are a lover of great writing and poetry and stuff like that, there's actually a website called rumi.org.uk, and there's all sort of different poems that he wrote. He basically, Rumi was a very famous scholar, let's say. Let's call him a scholar. But he did a lot of writing. He lived in the 13th century, basically. I don't know exactly what years he was alive, but the 13th century is sort of when he lived his life, let's say. So he had great influence and inspired a lot of people that read his work. He was one of the most popular poets, basically, in the world. One of the best-selling poets of all time, so to speak. Let's just put it that way. But he was more than just a poet. He was a big figure in Islam as well, and a scholar, and all of this stuff. He practiced Sufism, mystic Sufi, which I think the Sufi religion is actually something that this Abdes Salam Attar that does this brand, this La Via del Profumo, practices. And so he's a very interesting figure, but, you know, he's got, for example, here's a fragrance that was actually based on Rumi's teachings, and I bet you didn't know about. It was this. It was Nishane's Fan Your Flames, which actually makes sense when you think about the fact that Nishane is a Turkish house. But basically, the quote from Rumi in one of his poems or writings or whatever was, "Set your life on fire, seek those who fan your flames." And that's basically where the name Fan Your Flames comes from. And I actually really like this. This is one of my favorite Nishane fragrances. And I don't think, had I known, you know, if I didn't know this was based around Rumi's teachings, there's no way I would have known that this is, the fragrance itself doesn't feel as connected to Rumi as Ensar's does. I will tell you that. Ensar's actually feels like there is a connection to Rumi. But I want to read you just a couple of his poems because, interestingly enough, he mentions fragrance in a lot of them, actually, and maybe that's why so many people use Rumi as like an inspiration, as something to look up to when they create a fragrance. So here's an example of one. It's beautiful, actually. It says, I am a sculptor, a molder of form. In every moment I shape an idol, but then, in front of you, I melt them down. I can rouse 100 forms and fill them with spirit, but when I look into your face, I want to throw them in the fire. My soul spills into yours and is blended, because my soul has absorbed your fragrance. I cherish it. Every drop of blood I spill informs the earth. I merge with my beloved. When I participate in love in this house of mud and water, my heart has fallen to ruins. Enter this house, my love, or let me be. So he mentions fragrance there, and there's actually many of his writings where he mentions perfume or fragrance or, you know, smells or stuff like that. So maybe that's the reason why, you know, maybe that's the reason why it is so ubiquitous for people to use him as an inspiration. Like, for example, here's another one. I won't read the whole thing of this one because it's long, but just the first part of the poem says, "If anyone asks you how the perfect satisfaction of all our sexual wanting will look, lift your face and say, like this. When someone mentions the gracefulness of the night sky, climb up onto the roof and dance and say, like this. If anyone wants to know what spirit is or what God's fragrance means, lean your head towards him or her. Keep your face there close, like this." And on and on and on it goes on. Great poem, actually. So maybe that's the reason why Rumi is such an inspiration to many. So let's talk about Ensar's Rumi. And so basically, the first thing I noticed when I sprayed Rumi is that it will remind you of other Ensar fragrances. And I've noticed this actually with a few of his fragrances that I've smelled. So for example, I mentioned EO1 being my favorite, but I also have videos on the channel on EO2. And probably Rumi starts out a little closer to EO2, but it has that Ensar DNA. But the first thing that you'll notice, or the first thing that I noticed, is this extremely realistic, actually maybe one of the most photorealistic Arabic coffee smells. Now, I have a very particular view, a unique view of Arabic coffee, and the reason is that I'm actually half Arabic. So I was born in Jordan, and you know, that Bedouin coffee tradition in Jordan is a big thing. And if you've ever had proper Arabic coffee, so after they make it, it sits in this thermos, which is basically called like a dalla. Some people use a thermos, some people use like a very ornate, decorative dalla, which they then go around to serve the coffee on. But, you know, if you unscrew the thermos, for example, or you take the top off, or when the coffee is poured, you're hit with this overwhelmingly strong smell. And the coffee is extremely strong, and the cups that the Arabic coffee is served in are actually very small. And the reason is coffee is a diuretic, so when you're in the desert, obviously, you don't want to drink like a whole 20-ounce Starbucks and then you just, you know, piss out all of your, you know, all of your fluid, right? So they drink very small coffee, but it's very strong. And it's typically unfiltered. So basically, Arabic coffee is boiled coffee, is what it is. So it's boiled coffee that's unfiltered, and it's typically served black. So it's black, unsweet, no cream, no sugar, it's black. And it's very rich, it's very bold, it's very bitter in taste compared to probably what you're used to if you're used to westernized coffees. Especially in the United States. You know, you go to Starbucks, they add half and half and milk and sugar and 5 pumps of that liquid stuff, which is basically like straight high fructose corn syrup, right? And it ends up tasting like a dessert. If that's your vision of coffee, this is going to be completely different for you. You may have no frame of reference to proper Arabic coffee. However, if you have a frame of reference to proper Arabic coffee, this sort of bitter taste, and actually usually in Arabic culture, it is very common to serve coffee with sweets, because the coffee is so black and bitter and dark and rich and deep and bold, that the sweets, the dates, the, you know, cookies or whatever they serve with it, excuse me, is supposed to help offset that sort of extreme bitterness, which I've come to really enjoy. They also usually mix it with cardamom, at least in Jordan, where I'm used to it now. Different Middle Eastern states each do their coffee differently. So if you go to Yemen, it's different from Saudi Arabia. It's different from Lebanon. It's different from Syria. But the coffee that I'm familiar with, the smell that I am familiar with, is that cardamom coffee smell. And you get that here. It actually recreates it brilliantly. And even though in the opening, I almost feel like it's like taking the lid off of the dalla and just getting a waft of that extremely strong, fresh, hot, searing hot Arabic coffee. As the fragrance dries, the coffee's in the base, so you will continue to get it throughout, but it never recreates that just almost like sticking your nose in a fresh, hot, just poured Arabic coffee. that happens mostly in the opening. As the fragrance dries, other notes come in. You still will get the coffee, but it almost feels like the coffee has sat for a little bit. You know what I mean? It doesn't have that extreme fresh, like invigorating smell like you just opened the dala. So something to keep in mind with the fragrance. But as far as recreating that Arabic coffee smell, there was another fragrance I mentioned. I really liked the way it was done. Spirit of Dubai's Majalis. And while I do still like that fragrance, this is on another level for me. As far as like the photorealistic Arabic coffee smell. I like the Majalis for that Middle Eastern style, but it's much more designer in creation. This is much more niche, much more artisanal niche to me. And so I really am a fan of the opening. And actually, if you've been following my channel, you know that I recently tried a coffee fragrance that I rate as like my Grail coffee fragrance, and it's called Oud Luwak from the House of Arij Ladore, and it's probably my my favorite coffee fragrance, but that focuses more on that, what they call Kopi Luwak, which is a coffee that goes through the intestines of the civet, and actually the people go through and take out the coffee cherries out of their poop, out of the civet's poop as it gets digested, and then they distill it. And it's a very expensive coffee. So this Rumi creation just nails the Arabic coffee note to me. Florals and spices mixed with that Arabic coffee. And basically what ends up coming together with the coffee is this brilliant cumin. So you get this cumin, clove, and rose combo. And actually, if you go watch my EO2 review, you'll get an idea for how I feel about the way that the spices sort of blend with this, because it does feel very similar to other Ensar fragrances. And I can definitely pick up his house DNA. Now that I've smelled more and more Ensar's work, I definitely can pick up that Ensar DNA, if you will. And so to me, the biggest downfalls with some of these Ensars, and I've been blessed to get to know more and more of his work, and the issue that I'm having with them, again, is that many of them start to smell the same. So, for example, EO1 has this Ensar DNA, but with this extra leather twist. EO2 has this Ensar DNA, but with this musk twist. I have yet to smell EO3 or EO4 yet. I would love to, but I've yet to. I don't think I've smelled those yet. And Rumi is basically like the coffee twist, if that makes sense. So it's the Ensar DNA with the coffee twist. And you know, the problem is the skeleton of the composition smells very much the same. And I don't know whether it's because the high quality ingredients used, and that's just how they smell. So for example, in Rumi, Ensar claims to use Tibetan musk and what he calls a double shot of ambergris, whatever that means. But I don't know if it's because he uses these naturals that's just how they smell, the ambergris and the musk, and it's just a similar type setup when he blends it all together, or what. But you know, I'm one thing that I cannot do in good faith is I cannot stand up here and say I know the difference between Tibetan musk versus Siberian musk, you know, versus vintage Indian deer musk. That I can't say, honestly. You know, and there may be some musk experts in the room, but I'm not one of them. But to my nose, for whatever that's worth, this is just my opinion, and it's an early impression. This is the first time I've worn this. And it's not like I've gone through a full bottle or anything like that. So this is just sort of an early impression video, but very similar to EO1 and EO number 2 type smell. And, you know, one thing that you'll notice with Ensar's compositions is the ambergris adds this sparkle. On some of my other videos, I called it the Ensar sparkle, because that's what it feels like. The fragrances feel sort of spicy and sparkly and woody and all of these different things, but that's sort of the air between the notes where there's space for you to sort of, you know, really pick out that sparkle. It's not so, it's a totally different style from something like Oud Luwak, where Oud Luwak, you actually get some of Russian Atom style, which is more of the bigger, heavier, ambery, you know, lava-like amber compositions. And it's funny because when I read some of the reviews on Rumi, that's how they describe it. And I completely disagree. I don't think it has any of that big, heavy amber like Arij Ladore, Russian Oud. It has nothing like Russian Oud, nothing like Oud Luwak. You know, this is completely different. It's much closer to EO1, EO2, those kind of fragrances for me. Now, I've never smelled Crime and Punishment. If you go on Fragrantica, one person said it smells like Crime and Punishment. I've never smelled Crime and Punishment. But it definitely has that DNA, that Ensar DNA, if you will. And mixed with that DNA, as initial hit of that, you know, coffee shop image, it starts to, you know, change, and you kind of look around and you start to get a sense of your surroundings, you're going to notice that what it's mixed with is dried fruits, specifically apricot, but dried fruits in general, and flowers. Okay, and the floral heart in this fragrance is huge. There's narcissus, which is a type of daffodil. I've done a This Is Not a Top 10 Narcissus video if you want to check that out. There's Persian Rose Otto, which I actually really like. I like when there's blends of rose, and especially, you know, in here there's Persian rose and Turkish rose. And there's this almost fruity, almost stretchy, banana-like ylang-ylang note. And so the image of, so imagine this image, and this is probably a very popular image. I think that's how the website describes it. I'll read you the Ensar blurb before all is said and done. But the image I want you to think about is sitting in a Turkish coffee shop. Okay, let's say you've never been to Turkey before. I've never been to Turkey. I've never been to Istanbul. So let's say you're sitting in a coffee shop in Istanbul, and you're doing one of my favorite activities, people watching. And usually judging people as they walk by, or pretending you know what they're talking about, laughing at them when they run into something, or, you know, they're looking down at their phone and they run into a pole, and, you know, or they walk by arguing with their spouse. Or people watching is a fun activity. So you're people watching. You're just sitting there enjoying the view of Istanbul in the city and the beautiful weather, and drinking your Arabic coffee with cardamom, and you're smelling the flowers. And the flowers are planted around, let's say, the seating area. And so every now and then you get a waft of this beautiful rose, or narcissus, or ylang-ylang, or, you know, all of these different flowers. I think there's also a little bit of jasmine in here. Yeah, there's jasmine sambac, and there's bourbon geranium, and there's elderflower, which elderflower is a flower that I actually don't have too much experience with. I know that with elderflower there is actually a drink that I used to buy that was like an elderflower soda or something, and it has this very strange, you know, mustiness, bittersweet, you know, type taste. And I don't know if the smell of the flower is the same, but elderflower is a very interesting note. That's a little off the beaten path. You don't see very much elderflower, but the rest of them you're used to seeing. And osmanthus. And osmanthus adds to that peachy apricot-ness of the top. And there's a touch of ginger as well. But, you know, osmanthus adds to this leathery, you know, almost like the nectarine is beginning to turn, but it's not bad yet, but it's starting to decay a little bit, and it adds a little bit of the suede-y leatheriness to it. And that's in the heart, okay? And so you're sitting there sipping your Arabic coffee, getting whiffs of the beautiful flowers as the wind, let's say, you know, blows towards you. And then from behind, another table that's enjoying themselves orders like a hookah, and they bring it out to them, and they're sitting there smoking their, you know, fruity smelling, incensey, smoky hookah. And that all mixes, that smoke blend, but not like true incense smoky blend, but like a fruity, you know, uplifting, incensey type smell. And so there's nothing really off-putting about this. The incense is, I would say, very easy to handle for a newcomer, let's say. And it's quite nice. The downfall for me is this. If I spend $500, and there's no pricing, I have no clue what this went for. I think this came out years ago. I don't think it's a new release or anything like that. I think it's definitely been around 2-3 years. And so, you know, for me, if I spend $500, let's say it was $500. I don't know what a bottle would go for now, because there isn't one for sale anywhere. But let's just say a bottle popped up and it was $700, right? For 50 ml or 30 ml or whatever his bottles are. If I'm going to spend that kind of money, I want to be challenged. I want to smell amazing, challenging oud. That, you know, there is what Cambodian oud, or what the Ensar website calls Cambodi agarwood, but it doesn't give me enough of that animalic bit that I have come to crave. Like, the more I've become an oud head, the more I've gotten into the smell of oud. the more I want that high-quality, challenging agarwood smell. Because remember, when you smell high-quality agarwood, you're smelling the ocularia tree having this existential crisis. It's literally fighting for its life, right? And so I want to smell the struggle. I want to smell the challenge. I want to smell the fight of the tree to stay alive. I want to smell all those things. And I want it to be... I always want more. You know, I've got the Russian atom disease. We want more ambergris, more musk, more oud, more, all of that good stuff. And so if someone is newer to Ensar's work, this is an absolute perfect intro. Like now, if someone asks me, hey, Ramsey, money is no issue. I'll be able to find any Ensar because I'm willing to pay for it. And just which one should I start with if I'm new to his creations? And so far, this is the one that I would say for a newbie to start with, because it doesn't have the heavy leatheriness of EO1 with the castoreum, you know, and it doesn't, that animalic castoreum, which I love so much. But if you're new, you may not like that as much. So it doesn't have the muskiness, the musky animalic base of EO number 2. Because remember, with the musk, that is sort of the deer giving signals to the other deer, either that this is their territory, or for the female deer that they're ready to mate. You know, the female can pick up everything that they need about the male from that smell of the musk, right? So there is a little bit of this, depending on the musk, but my favorite musks are animalic. I like when the musk pod is used, the outer bit that adds this leathery, when they tincture the pod itself. I love that leathery animalicness. Sometimes the inside can be very powdery and musky. But Rumi has some of these notes listed. It has the oud, it has the musk, it has the ambergris, but even though it isn't sweet, thank God, it is not sweet, but it does feel like one of the most mass-appealing Ensars, if that makes sense. It just does. I mean, do I like it? Yes. Would I wear it? Yes. Would I buy it? No, absolutely not. I mean, unless someone said, hey, Ramsey, I got a bottle for 50 bucks or something, I'm out. You know, this is not the kind of fragrance that I want to spend this much money on. And so I'll read you the blurb just because it's not super long. But here's what Ensar has to say about it. He says, Rumi is as much a part of Turkish culture as are the medieval cafes that decorate the Bosphorus to this day. This perfume recounts what it must have been like, what it still is like, to walk the pebbled streets on your way to any of the thousands of zawiyas dedicated to the message of love Rumi spread throughout this blessed land and beyond. If you can't smell the fragrance, don't come into the garden of love. That was a quote from Rumi. Cups of Turkish coffee on the ferry as you gaze over at Topkapi Palace. The spice shops that surround Fatih Kami, the iconic Turkish rose harvest festivities. Cracking open cardamom for your coffee brew. I can get down with that. Or pausing to enjoy the delight of smelling ylang-ylang. Sufism and scent have never been far removed. Listen to Sufi odes or bliss out on love poetry and you'll hear songs and rhymes personifying fragrances aplenty. Penned, of course, by Sufis drowned in those smells. Sufi sages have always imbued their writing, their songs, their attire, and their teaching with the reminder that scent can be transcendent. Disciples used to cultivate flower gardens around places of worship so to guide the soul with rare wafts of otherworldly aromas. Even today, you see flowers planted around at the entrance of many teaks and mosques, a manifestation of the divine beauty. When Rumi says, I have a fragrance in my mind, let's try again. When Rumi says, I have fragranced my mind with the scent of Shamsuddin, my master, oud, amber, and musk I do not need. I have fragranced my mind with the scent of Shamsuddin, my master. Oud, amber, and musk I do not need. That's a very beautiful quote, but I need the oud, amber, and musk. He reasserts the pedigree of those aromatics. Persian poetry overflows with references to perfume because, as with love, how intrinsic it is to stirring the soul. A spritz of Rumi is a reminder of the love he shared, and the aromatic lineup above we are blessed to rejoice in, featuring the world's most precious floral extracts, rare narcissus, heady aroma to bolster a bouquet of rose extracts, and complement the darker tone of elderflower, sweetened by the thick, jammy, sweet allure of osmanthus. Honestly, I don't get very much osmanthus, just a little bit. If that floral brew wasn't loud enough by itself, Rumi is drinking a tall cup of Tibetan musk. Well, it's not coffee, it's musk he's drinking. And a double shot of ambergris to boot. There you go. The amber tincture is 2.5 times more than the deer musk, which alone is way more than you'd get elsewhere. Well, I mean, that doesn't really tell us how much it's using. Just that it's 2.5 times more. What if the Tibetan musk was 0.0001 and the tincture was 2.5 times 0.0? I don't know if that really tells us much, but I get what he's saying. Rumi is an insanely elaborate composition. If I had to list all the notes in the scent pyramid, you'd be scrolling for a while. I don't know if I like that. And has been in the work for the past 2 years, so take a spray and get ready to whirl. Okay, so I like the whole write-up except for the end. Like, I could tell you all the notes, but if I did, it would be too much for you, so I'm not going to. But anyways, I do really love Ensar and his work. I've come to really enjoy getting to know them. Mostly because, you know, friends in the community sold me stuff like this at a very fair price. They didn't give me, you know, force me to pay huge markups, and I've been able to sample a lot of his work thanks to, you know, I didn't have to buy these samples, which if you go try to buy like 2 mils of Rumi or something like that from Sealed Essence, like 2 mils is like $69 or 70 bucks or something. It's like, you know, it's very hard to sample. So thank you to the kindness of Nick and people like Nick who have sent me stuff like this so I can do these type of videos. I hope these are helpful to you. I understand that for the average person, you can't just go buy this at the store. You can't just go click buy. This is the real fraghead content. This is actually the type of content I want to make, because if you go search for Ensar Oud Rumi, guess what? There are 0 videos. None. 0, which is insane to me that no one did a video on YouTube on Rumi. All those folks with a bottle, no one's done a video. So, you know, my little sample is enough to just get on here, hit play on the phone, and just ramble. And I hope you've taken something from it. I hope that this is a helpful review. You understand the scent a little bit better. And if you've smelled Rumi, or if you're familiar with Ensar's work, do let me know. If you know about the rumors I mentioned at the beginning, do let me know. And if you're interested in Feel Oud's collaboration between Arij Ladore and Bortnikov, then Russian Atom and Bortnikov, then feel-oud.com has the 3 fragrances up and ready to go. So thank you everyone for watching. It's always a pleasure. I'll be back tonight, hopefully with a late night insight video on Sherazade, and look forward to seeing you guys soon. Cheers. Bye now.